Welcome to the Learning Lounge, the official podcast of Virtual Prep of West Virginia. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Nason, and this is where families, students, and educators come together to talk real virtual learning. So grab your coffee, settle in, and let's learn, connect, and grow right here in the Learning Lounge. I am so excited to welcome everyone back to our third episode. I have Gabrielle here, and we are going to talk today about everyone's most favorite topic, state testing. So welcome, Gabrielle. Thank you for being here with me today. If you could share a little bit about who you are, your role here at VPrep West Virginia, that would be great.
Wonderful. Yes, thank you for that introduction. My name is Gabrielle Burriss, and I'm the elementary school principal at Virtual Preparatory Academy of West Virginia. I'm proud to say that I was born, raised, and educated here in this beautiful state. But as an elementary school principal, my role involves supporting everything K through 5. So instruction, assessment, student support, and I just need to make sure that those systems are working smoothly and in the best interest of our learners.
Can you share a little bit about your journey here with our schools? Because you didn't start off here, and I think it's important, especially as we start talking about testing, just for our listeners to kind of know a little bit about your background.
Absolutely. So I was employed in the Northern Panhandle of West Virginia in a brick and mortar school. I administered many standardized assessments through that process. I was also the teacher of the year, so that was super exciting. I was a graduate assistant at West Liberty University. So I've done a little bit of everything, and coming to virtual has been such a blessing. Most people, their first initial reaction to virtual, they associate with COVID in 2020, yes, when no one was prepared for that. And we had so many support systems put into place that it is night and day in comparison. So I love working virtually, and it's wonderful to be able to support our students throughout the state.
You originally started here as a special education teacher, correct?
Yes, I started here as a special education teacher. My master's degree was in educational leadership, and I started the pathway to pursue my doctorate degree, and this position opened up, and I heard a little rumor that said, hey, you should apply. You might be a good fit for the position, and I went through, and it was wonderful. My doctorate degree then transitioned into an educational specialist degree, and I am currently a specialist in trauma-informed education, which I think is highly needed in the state of West Virginia.
Yes. I love it. You have such a unique background, and so I appreciate you sharing that with us. So are you ready to talk about educators' favorite topic and families' favorite topic ever of statewide testing?
Absolutely. Let's rip the Band-Aid off.
Let's do it. We are going to dive in. So let's just start off in general. I feel like when we say statewide testing, it slightly triggers not only us, but families, students, whether you are at a brick and mortar, whether you were in a virtual school. Can you share a little bit about how you help reframe what testing is and what it isn't?
So I think there needs to be a larger conversation of exactly why we do standardized testing. And virtual charter schools are still very new in the state of West Virginia. We're only a few years old. And after listening to stakeholders, I find that there's a misconception that we may be a homeschool program. Our students are completing school from home, but we are a public charter school, and public is an extremely important word in that phrase. We are required to follow Policy 2340 in the state of West Virginia, and currently in that policy, there are no opt-out provisions for our students. So every single student in the state of West Virginia that is in a public school is required to take a standardized assessment. That can be stressful, right?
Yeah.
Just knowing that you have to do something and thinking about it is stressful within itself. And I would love to reframe this conversation of what testing is. I want people to know that testing is just one snapshot in time. Everyone has a great day. Everyone has a bad day. Depending on what that day is, that's how it will.
Yeah, like tell that story that day.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's absolutely not a measure of a student's worth, their intelligence, their potential. It's a tool that helps us understand where students are academically so we can celebrate that growth, but we can also personally reflect and see how we can better support our students in their learning journey.
Absolutely. And I love that you bring up that distinction because I think often, there obviously we want students to show what they know, right?
Yeah.
But to your point, it's double-sided. Like, more often than not, we're using that to know where did we do really well in our instruction and where do we need to focus, hone in to support our students better. And I love that you brought that up because I think that is often a missed piece because of kind of the stress around it. And so I'd love to know from the state standpoint, because you bring up a very good point. Our students are at home when they receive their instruction, but this isn't homeschool. So, where the state is concerned, why is it important? Why do schools put an emphasis on showing what you know and doing your best on that test? Can you talk a little bit about what that means at a state level, school standing, and things of that nature?
Absolutely. So I think it's very important to recognize that since we are a public charter school, our existence depends on that public following that public school law. So testing is a part of that beast. Your cooperation, the learning coach's cooperation, the student's cooperation, whoever it may be, is required for us to proceed as a learning organization. And that's a difficult conversation to have.
Yeah.
I understand it can be stressful, but at the same time, if we work together through this process, it will at least ease those stresses to make it as comfortable as it possibly can be.
Well, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about it, but one of our district benchmarks is like ready assessment, right? And our students are just getting ready to start getting introduced in advance to what state testing will look like and things of those nature. And really, I feel like obviously those are data points for us along the way, but we're also trying to help our students in getting ready for this, right? Just the skill. I know coming from special education world myself, I always remember where it was the focus on, we're going to do it. We're going to do a good job. And for some kids, it is really hard because they're being tested at grade level standards. And sometimes if you're not completely there yet, can be really, really hard. And I always took an approach of it's about doing it, accomplishing it, setting a goal for yourself. And it's going to be hard. We can do hard things and we're going to get through it. And I know that you share kind of in that, let's reframe our mindset about what this is.
When I was younger, my dad always had an incredible perspective on just schooling and grades in general. And now to counteract that, I was traditionally a strong student, no surprise. But there were times that I would get a grade that I was not proud of. And maybe even I didn't perform like I thought I would on a standardized assessment. And he would always ask me, did you try your best? And I would always go like, yes, of course. What do you mean? That's why I'm so upset. I tried my best. But then he explained something that really stuck with me is that if I genuinely tried my best, I didn't rush. I put forth an honest effort. That's the grade I have, and that's okay. And I think that's an incredible perspective to have in terms of standardized testing. It is just a snapshot in time. That does not reflect your current standing in terms of who you are as a human being.
Right. And to your point, I'm not a good test taker. Give me something to write all day long. Put a test in front of me, and it's like I could black out and have no idea. It's just the test anxiety that I still get as an adult. And I love that you're bringing that up because sometimes it is just about showing up, trying your best, and being okay with walking away saying, but I know I did my best. I know I didn't rush. I know that I gave it my all. And what a celebration. If you show up and do that, you're probably going to be surprised with the results that you get, as opposed to that opposite. So kind of like you said, mindset is everything. So let's talk a little bit about who takes state assessments, because that definitely kind of hones in like the certain grade levels that we're kind of talking to in this podcast.
Yeah. So our main virtual assessment that we administer at our school is called the General Summative Assessment, or the GSA, and students in grades 3 through 8 will take that virtually. We do have a couple one-off assessments that other grade levels may take, like our 8th graders are taking the Golden Horseshoe. In high school, we will have the SAT, our civics exam, and then any students who are on alternative standards, they may take the DLM. So there are a lot of standardized assessments that are working together sort of in a cog. that helps our machine run. We do offer in-person assessments for students who may need more assistance with technology, but we can schedule those specifically with the proctor if you would need. But as I stated before, this is required by West Virginia state law, so we do have to participate.
I love that you shared that it's not a one size fits all. We recognize that we have to participate in it, but here at B Prep, we do try to work as closely as possible with our families and understanding that one size does not fit all and virtual might not be a best platform. I will say, I know from last year, the majority do take it virtually. And we're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like. But we did have some in-person tests going on. The SAT is fully in person. So depending upon the test also kind of depends upon creative we can kind of get with supports. But I love that you shared that it is not K-12 and everyone who takes it. But this is a really great podcast to listen to too for like our second grade families. This is what you're coming into in third grade. It's kind of that first big year that our students access state testing. Okay, so the biggest question is virtual state testing. So can you walk us through what a typical testing day looks like for a student from logging in to logging out? And maybe talk a little bit what happens to their schedule during this testing window.
Yeah, so to maintain our integrity with the GSA, the students are required to take the test in a lockdown browser. And so that requires our entire process to look slightly different than if they would just normally log into their live session or similar to how they would participate in their brick and mortar. I also want to differentiate. I'm going to talk about our official testing schedule, and I know a lot of people are currently doing practice assessments. So those will look slightly different, but the teacher or the proctor will obviously be able to give any information to help support moving forward. But when we get into the official testing season in spring, testing course card is going to appear on your student's dashboard. And that test proctor will be reaching out to the families and they'll provide some generalized information. For example, they may say, hello, you are going to be testing this week. It will traditionally be either first thing in the morning or right after lunch. They will also be giving students their WEVIS number or SSID number. If you are traditionally from a brick and mortar, you may call it your lunch number. And so once all of that information is given, you have to just wait for the day of testing, right? So finally, you get to the day of testing and you are going to log into a big blue button session. So just like you log into any of your other live sessions that you do day to day, you would go into a live session with your instructor or your proctor. And there will only be a maximum of 10 students in that live session. So there will not be a lot of students that a teacher or a proctor has to manage, which is wonderful because then we will be able to give that individualized attention. But when the students finally start to get in, there are a lot of instructions and processes we need to follow to ensure that it is in an appropriate environment. So, for example, the students have to have their cameras on and they can't have backgrounds. So we have wonderful backgrounds right now, but we need to be able to see the room that the student is in. So a lot of our students will actually take their Chromebook or their computer and they will shift it side to side so we can make sure that there's no academic materials on the wall or that there's a learning coach there to help support them. Now, learning coaches can definitely help support in terms of getting logged in, but in terms of academics, we obviously can't have that.
In a classroom, you have to take anything down off your walls. I always remember like prep time in a traditional classroom. It's like your classroom looks real bare during testing season because there can't be anything on your wall. Kids can't have anything on their desks. So essentially in a virtual world, you can't have backgrounds. So we have to be able to confirm the validity of the security during the virtual test session in order for us to validate essentially that that test was taken by the student and it's an authentic and true result of their test taking. So when we're asking and a proctor teacher is asking like, hi, can you move your camera, it's simply just to be able to verify that there's no multiplication tables or cheat sheets going on so that we can move them forward. One of the questions was about just how's it designed to be secure, fair, and student friendly, and that's how. What would you say, though, are some of the key differences that families might notice between virtual testing and traditional testing? So share a little bit about that.
So when we move from our live session to the secure test browser, that is usually where we lose a lot of students because there's not that direct support. And that's when the learning coach comes in to be an integral person in this entire process. So in brick and mortar, you'll always have a teacher that says, hey, yes, I can help you get logged on. Here's this number. Here's this code. But in this environment, students have to log out of their entire Chromebook to get into the secure test browser. So having that learning coach or having someone there to help support the student to be able to get to it is very important. I would say that's the main difference. A wonderful difference that we have is since we're testing virtually, your student is already testing in a small group. They're testing by themselves. I think back to when I was in school, standardized testing, there would always be students that finished very quickly. And then it's a distraction to me.
Yes.
Like they finished and they're tapping their pencil or they're flipping through these pages and I cannot focus on the question. And I think that's just what our brain naturally does.
Or they finish quickly and then you find yourself starting to speed up because it's like, well, I need to be done.
Yeah. And in this environment, you take your own time. This test is not timed and you don't know when other people are finishing. So you can take as long as you need and you do not have to worry about any distractions that may come up during that.
So really, learning coaches play the pivotal part in getting them set up that first step login each day that they're doing their test. And then once that happens, then the learning coach's role is like, once you got them in, we got them. They're good.
Get out of there.
Then the learning coach kind of shifts into kind of the classroom monitor to make sure that there aren't any distractions that pop up while their students taking the test. So would that be kind of a fair statement there?
Yeah, for our learning coaches, they obviously cannot help out with anything academic. But when we look at the technological side, if your student is having trouble logging into the browser, accessing the browser, whatever it may be, you are a direct support for them. If you need to go in and help them type in their Weavis or lunch number, or if they need help typing in the code, absolutely, please assist them in doing that. Because I know some people would use the analogy that the learning coach is the bus that takes the child to school. And so you are the bus that takes the child to test.
I love that. And I know we're skipping ahead, so further down our list of questions, but I love that it's just going there. For a learning coach listening to this, where they're like, well, how do I know how to help them with any of this? Can you share a little bit about what kind of information might be coming out? Are there any training documents or anything that we have planned to support the learning coach in their role of kind of tech help and distraction monitor?
So prior to when we take the official test, well ahead of time, learning coaches will know the times and the days that students will be testing. So please don't think that this will be next week, we're going to try this. This takes months of planning ahead of time. And we will make sure to be able to give that information to our learning coaches, to their emails. We will also have our teachers contacting. I know many of our families are filling out our test agreement form for the virtual environment. So I appreciate if you've already filled that out. And in this process, the learning coach can speak directly with the proctor as well. And the proctor in elementary school, 9 times out of 10 will be an individual you have already seen either in a live session. So if you are in 4th grade, you may see Miss Slip. If you are in 5th grade, you may see Mrs. Smith. So these are individuals that hopefully you already have a relationship with that you can communicate with. And then you will also have more information sent to you. And in our assemblies course card, if you go to the 3 through 5 or 6 through 8 assemblies course card, it will have directions on how to access the secure test browser if you have a school issued Chromebook, a Mac, or a PC.
So lots of support for students, lots of support for our learning coaches. Okay, so let's talk about, we're getting ready for test day. We've talked a little bit about what it looks like on the school side. But how can families at home support with student confidence and readiness without that added kind of pressure?
Thankfully, we're actually starting to practice these assessments as we move up into May. So I think exposure is a wonderful process that we can go through and have the students get comfortable. I know the first time they get in that browser, it is a little intimidating. They're asking very important questions that your teacher said you have to answer and you want to do well. So I think that exposure will definitely help. So whenever your teacher says that they're going to do a practice test, maybe in the following week, I highly recommend that you attend, because the more often your child gets into that practice test in the browser, the more likely that they will be successful on the final test. And I think it's also important to have that conversation and say, hey, just like I had that conversation with my dad, it is okay. Try your best. If something doesn't work out, we will figure it out. But it's okay.
We know you might have some tech glitches. Like, we're here to triage them with you and help you. I think as learning coaches, your ability to stay calm and know that we got you, we're going to figure it out. There's plenty of time to take the test. Remaining calm for our kids is super beneficial too, so that when it does get figured out, they're not all kind of wound up going into it. It's okay. They can take as much time as they want. So I love that you shared that. We talked a lot about kind of how learning coaches can support during testing, but are there any before day up, like technology or materials that families can double check before testing begins?
So first and foremost, I would make sure that we have a working camera and a working microphone. And if we don't currently have that, well ahead of time, hopefully before the night before.
Like check now.
Check now.
Okay.
We can contact the Technology Service Desk, or TSD. I'm sure many of you have that number, and it's also on the course page of every single course in our school. And so make sure that those work, because during the test environment or during the test, the proctor will be able to see and hear. And it's important that we can maintain that testing environment to ensure we see the kid and hear them. I would also say that the Chromebook or computer needs to be updated to the most recent software. So last year, I can recall some of our Chromebooks that we had issued, they weren't updated yet. And kiddos were not able to get into that browser. But once they updated their Chromebook, they were able to get in flawless.
Okay. So check camera, check microphone, make sure you're up to date.
Yeah. And I would also say, when you are about to go into your big blue button session to start testing, have something to write with, preferably a pencil and a piece of paper.
Is fantastic advice.
Yes.
Okay, we're in testing. It's happening. The kid's in their test session and there's a tech issue or something goes awry. Camera stops working, microphone stops working. We get kicked out, computer shuts down. I'm sure we could go on and on with the list. If that happens, what does a learning coach do?
Yeah, and this is where we differ from that brick and mortar environment, right? If there's a teacher in the classroom, they're easily able to start that navigation. But at home, there should be a learning coach somewhere to be able to help start that process. Now, if the student is having any tech issues, they should notify the proctor. That is when that proctor will be able to get in contact with a learning coach directly. So the learning coach shouldn't come in and start trying to mess around with the computer. They need to directly contact or be contacted by the proctor to be able to navigate how to move forward. And it's sort of a trickle down effect, or I guess trickle off effect. From there, if the proctor cannot figure it out with the learning coach, it would move to me. And if I cannot figure it out, it would move to our testing coordinator. And if our testing coordinator cannot figure it out, it would move to the state of West Virginia.
And does anything happen to the test? So is there any negative impact per se on that test session if there's a tech problem, a student gets kicked out or anything like that?
So for our math, ELA, and science tests for fifth grade, they will save the answers. So if a student is taking the test and let's say they're on question 21 and there's a glitch, questions 1 through 20 will be saved. Now, if you're taking a writing assessment, it truly depends on how fast we can get the glitch fixed. Because for the writing assessment in West Virginia, you have to finish it the same day you started it. So if a student wrote information down or typed information into their test, and let's say it glitched and we were unable to fix it, If they would reattempt it the next day, it would be blank. So that is the only caveat. All of the other tests will save their responses, but writing, we truly need to, as the kids say, lock in to make sure that we can get it finished and hopefully without any glitches within one school day.
Okay, well, I love that, Ben. English, math, science. Which grade levels take science? So can we talk about that? Fifth and eighth grade. So fifth and eighth grade. So we have English, math, and writing. Those are your cores. If you are a fifth grader and an eighth grader, you got an additional one. You have science. But let's play this out. So English, math, and science, you can complete over multiple days.
Yeah.
Correct? Okay, perfect. So the only one that you're really locked in is the second you open and start that writing test, you're there finishing it that day. Do kids take all these tests all on the same day?
Absolutely not. That would not be appropriate whatsoever. I would not want to take this test all on the same day. So these tests are actually spaced out on multiple days. So we are trying to make it to where there is one test per day. I think that is the best situation for our students because I can only imagine after you spend hypothetically a few hours taking one test, the last thing I want to do is take another. So we are working on that schedule to ensure that it does not cause burnout.
So for example, let's say it's testing week. So you're saying English test might happen on Monday and you might start it in the morning. If you finish, fantastic. If you don't, you would then have you can go to lunch, take a break, then come back in the afternoon to finish. And then the next day might be math and so on.
Yes.
That is really nice. I know we've talked a lot about it because obviously while kids are testing, normal academic classes are not happening, correct?
Correct. So since we are virtual, we are virtually testing. If we can only have 10 students per proctor, we only have a certain amount of teachers. So since we are administering this, we want to maintain an appropriate environment. There may not be live sessions with your core teachers that you have Monday through Friday. So during a testing week, there will be activities if you're not testing that you can complete, and you can always go into those supplemental websites as well, like iExcel, iReady. But during our testing week, there may be times that live sessions are not consistent as you would usually experience them.
And what does that look like during testing week for attendance? Are parents expected to do all of this other stuff? Or does showing up to testing count for that attendance for that duration of the testing window?
And so in the behind the scenes, we keep a lot of data. And when our proctors are going to administer the test, they will have a list of all of the students that were there and engaging in the process throughout this. And so what we can do as a team is we can get those names specifically to our attendance team to ensure that they're not counted as absent. I will say there are times that when notes are put through, it can take up to 48 hours for this to be processed. But during the testing week, if your child shows up, participates in the test, tries their best, they would not be counted as that.
They're good to go. And we're not looking to add more to them. So you're saying they really just get to focus on testing for the week. Let's talk a little bit about some of our students who might need some extra supports. So what accommodations or supports are in place for statewide testing for students who might be on an individualized education plan or a Section 504 plan?
So the students who have IEPs, 504s, they will receive all their accommodations during the assessments. We currently send out or mail out multiplication tables, hundreds tables for those students who have that accommodation on their IEP or 504. And thankfully, in our environment, you're testing one-on-one essentially.
Right.
So we have our small group and we also have extended time. So they don't need to necessarily worry about getting extra time because they have all the time in the world they need.
Let's talk about staff monitoring. So what does it look like from a student's view? Do the students know they're being watched? Do they feel like that added pressure of like someone is sitting here staring at me in their little box while they're taking this test?
So before they get into the browser, they'll be in Big Blue Button, and that would be similar to any other live session they would be in. They would see their proctor and other students. But once they get into the Secure Test browser, it's actually really neat. So the test is the only thing the student is going to see. However, there will be a few options the students can click on. There's a raise hand feature. And then if you use an iPhone, there's almost a FaceTime feature. So they can actually request to FaceTime the proctor to ask a question or maybe tell them that they're having trouble moving on to the next question. So it's super awesome in that they will be able to maintain that communication with them. However, let's say they're like, okay, I've had enough of you. I'm done. I can go back to my question. They can click that hang up button and it will take them directly back to just focus on the test question. So they won't have any other type of distractions on their screen.
And if they don't run into any issue, it's just like they're sitting on a computer taking a test, doing an assignment. That's very cool. I love that, like a phone a friend option. Okay, we've gotten through the basics of what this looks like. Let's shift a little bit into, okay, the test's done. Test window's over. We got makeups. Once it's over, what can families expect happens next? So they've taken this big, huge test, and then what?
The West Virginia Department of Education website through testing actually has an awesome portal. We will be able to give codes to individual families. Once they input that code, they will be able to pull up the test results for their child immediately. And
Wow.
yeah. So I know previously when I was in school, we had to wait until the fall of the following year to get a booklet that talked about our test scores. But now in our virtual world, we have the ability to show their test scores almost immediately. So that will be sent out prior to the completion of the tests so that they would be able to log in and monitor to see when this work would be released.
Very cool. Knowing that writing is a little different, is that the same for writing or is the writing portion delayed a little bit?
So it's very interesting the way that scoring works for the ELA and writing exam. So once a student takes the ELA exam, let's say they have not taken the writing exam, their score will not show. Vice versa. If a student takes the writing exam and not the ELA exam, their score will not show. Once they take both, the system will calculate a score. So if we're taking ELA on Monday, but writing is on Wednesday, you may not get that score until Thursday of the week.
That is very good to know. Also very cool. I always remember in school, like it get mailed, like in the mail to my parents, like over summer. And I feel like the length of time by that point, like parents are like, what is this? Like, when did we do this? So I love the almost instant results that we get. So do we also get the instant results that parents get to see?
On our end, we will actually work together as an entire school. So our MTSS, for our student support, our general education teachers, special education teachers, we take all of this wonderful data and we see where there's room for improvement. And obviously, there's always room for improvement and growth. And the results of the general summative assessment or any standardized assessment we administer influences any adjustments we make for the following school year.
That's what's so nice about getting the results instantly, because even for school, sometimes it's not released until like the fall. And it's like, this would have been so great to have over summer while we're doing all of our improvement plans and talking about programming for the following year. So I love that West Virginia makes it so accessible, because we are able to almost in live time, along with families, say, okay, this is what we're seeing and this is the initiatives we need to be focused on, for the upcoming school year. So we have a few left. We're going to start wrapping this up. What's one thing you wish every family knew about statewide testing at VPrep West Virginia? Only one thing, Gabrielle?
If I had to choose one thing, I think it's that foundation that since we are a public charter school, the existence of our school depends on following public school law. And testing is a part of that beast. And the learning coaches' cooperation, the students' cooperation and flexibility, that helps us move throughout this journey. And it just makes our school better. And I know that that's sort of an entire idea of what encompasses testing. But I think that's what I would tell families.
I'm totally going rogue with the last question. So your favorite thing, I'm going to do it to you. We obviously 3 times a year take iReady from fall to winter across our K-12. We all were blown away at the growth of students. It is an indicator and can be an indicator of the growth we hope to see on statewide testing. So I would love to know from your principal hat, What are you most excited for going into this testing season? And what do you predict might be a student outcome for our school?
I will say, in terms of what I'm most excited for, I think that we're finally getting our foundation where we're truly at, and we're starting to see that growth. Like you mentioned, we had our fall iReady diagnostic at the beginning of the school year, and our winter iReady diagnostic we took in January, and we did see immense growth because we've altered our daily schedule to match student needs, and we've altered our MTSS to match student needs. So as we move forward, I know we will see growth on our general summative assessment this spring, and I cannot wait to see what our students can show us.
But it's wild, the growth that our kids are making. And so I know for us, we're kind of like anxiously excited to get into this because it's such an opportunity to be like, let's show the state of West Virginia what our kids are doing. Like, let's show and shine the amazing work that our teachers are doing, our students are doing, and our learning coaches are doing, because we can't do this without our learning coaches at home either. And I'm excited. I might be the only one sharing in that. But I just love how you reframe testing in a way that is growth oriented, and let's normalize the fact that we all have to do things in life we don't always love doing, but it's all how we show up in that moment and do it and approach it that really has such an impact on the outcome. So, Gabrielle, I cannot thank you enough for talking with me about statewide testing. I even feel a little more excited about it just after this conversation with you. And I think it's going to be really great. So just thank you for taking the time. Thank you for your knowledge on this topic. And I know you and I are going to be back together in a couple weeks. We're going to dig into all things elementary school, which will be very, very exciting. So I can't wait to see you back here again. And I just appreciate your time on this Friday.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And if any families have questions or concerns about testing, please reach out to your teachers. And if they cannot answer those questions, they will reroute the questions to administration.
It's going to be a great testing season, and I'm excited to kick it off. So have such a wonderful day and weekend. And we just thank everyone for listening today. And we will have another episode coming soon. So thank you.
Build a brighter future with VPrep by our side. VPrep West Virginia forever. We'll stand as one. Teachers of the future, our work's never done.